Bill 6613A is an ordinance appropriating federal forfeiture funds and transferring funds for the purchase of an armored personnel carrier, APC, for the police department and fixing the time when this ordinance shall become effective.
Staff report, please.
You'll remember at your last meeting, Chief, we talked about replacing the police department's armored personnel carrier, and there were questions at that meeting. We have come back with a report to try to answer some of those questions. And, Chief, anything you'd like to add there?
Just something that was overlooked in the report. I'd just like to mention the recently in public, the criminal element being so willing to take on the police with rifles. And a point I'd like to make is nothing that we have, ballistic vest that we have or anything can protect our officers from rifle rounds. And it seems to be fashionable across the country that when we do encounter these truly bad guys, that's what they're using. So I'm willing to answer any questions in the report. What we did was looked at the council meeting minutes, not the minutes, but the video, and went back and tried to address the questions that either citizens or the council brought up, and we hope we have everything addressed, but I'm here to answer anything else tonight.
How many times has this unit been borrowed by surrounding cities?
Very rarely, sir. And I know that was one of the issues, it's usually a mutual aid situation where a department that wouldn't have the equipment would call us and say, hey, we're really in trouble. Is there something you can do to help us? And then we would do that. It's not something that we would give to someone. We would actually send our personnel with the vehicle as a mutual aid agreement.
That's right, and I guess that's the idea, is that that you're doing it the same way that you would serve other police departments as they serve us.
Yes, sir, and that's something that I just would not do. If a department called and was truly in need, had a hostage situation or officers pinned down or something like that, I would feel obligated to help in any way I could.
So when I read the report, there seemed to be a log of the armored police, the APC being used in SWAT actions. Is there just a SWAT log, or is there a log of when the vehicle's used at all?
No, the SWAT actions that we included in here would be the types of issues that we would use it on. It wouldn't go out on every SWAT call out. I think there was some misunderstanding that it would be used to serve narcotics warrants and things like that, and that's not what it's designed for or what we would use it for. It's primarily a hostage rescue vehicle and an officer protection vehicle. When we got into situations like that or anticipated getting into a situation like that, that's when the vehicle would be used.
So has it ever been used in any other situation besides that?
Sir, I'd have to go back way before I got here to answer that question, so I don't want to answer you inaccurately. To my knowledge, it has not.
I know that we brought in codes, kind of uniform police codes that we've been looking. Do those deal with APCs in any manner? Right? Didn't we adopt
policies?
Didn't we adopt uniform kind of policies from a template sort of
actually,
situation?
Yes, sir. They would give us a template for use of it.
Was there any kind of APC guidelines in that template?
No, it's kind of left up to the SWAT commander based on what they know at the time. I think where you're going with this is, would we be using it on routine things and it be driving around the city all the time? It's
well,
unfortunately.
I'm less concerned about routine as I am about those very unusual situations, especially and very specifically in regards to crowd situations, protests, and situations where people are going to get run over. And I understand that you couldn't imagine that situation, I think was the language you used in the report. But I would feel better with kind of one of two things. One is, a history of how it has been used, and I appreciate how it's been used in SWAT situations over the last 5 years, which is about 37% of the potential data that we could look at over the 13-year history that we've operated in APC. So I would like to know, if it's ever been used for that situation, because how it's used in the past could point us towards how it might be used in the future, or if there were protocols or procedures or in regards to its use rather than the majority of the time, and these things where I'm more concerned about those possibly fringe situations, those unusual situations, what kind of reassurance do people have that it's not going to show up if there's some kind of civil disturbance where someone's going to potentially be run over, as I read about in the Tribune within the last month?
Right. Yeah, absent the need for an armored personnel vehicle, we're not going to use it. I can't think of an application where we would use it unless the people that were causing the disturbance were using firearms, and we had a reason to protect, or had to use the vehicle to protect either officers or citizens. It wouldn't be something that says, okay, we've got a group of people down at Broadway and Providence that are in the street and they're being civilly disobedient. That's not something we would use it for. We would have to know or think there was the potential for firearm violence. That's what the vehicle's designed for. And so I can tell you that if that's the council's wish, I obviously can look at the policy and make sure, I mean, as long as I'm police chief here, I can tell you that it's not going to be used that way. But I understand your concern in it being used in a manner that it's not really designed for as an intimidation factor. Yeah, that's just not something that I think would be appropriate. It would have to be a situation where I believe there was the potential for firearm violence that would put our officers and or our citizens in danger.
It would be appropriate for whoever the council is at the time to look at how this vehicle is being used in time future and to set protocol for its use.
We would be happy to, we've got the history of how it's used in the past. I would be happy to provide the councils in the future with a report every time it's used, if that would be something you would be interested in hearing. I mean, we do after-action reports, and you could look at that, and if you saw a use that you thought would be inappropriate, we can obviously talk about that.
That actually raises a question. The new database, is that going to make it easier to answer this sort of question?
By new database, you mean the new record system?
Yeah, the new record system. Is that going to make it easier for us to keep track of this vehicle and make sure it's not being used to go to McDonald's or something?
So there's two databases we need to replace. One that we're actively working now is the replacement of the HTE system, so the citywide financial database. That is not related to this per se. The other system we need to replace is the records management system in the police department, and that is not a live project at this moment, but it is something we have to do, and there are some funds to do that with. So when that happens, then the answer is yes. At that point, it would be part of that system.
I'm seeing that. This is only related by way of my question, but I see that as a big priority.
If I may, Mr. Schmidt, I think we probably have a mechanism in place to do what you're asking. We have a system that we use to document all uses of force by police officers. It's called Blue Team. It would be a relatively simple matter to just add a category in there when the Bearcat was used. And you could pull that information out. You could use the historical data, the number of times, how it was used, why it was used, who made the decision. All of those things could be documented very easily.
That would be a very easily implementable thing that wouldn't cost very much money, that wouldn't
cost
answer the
anything. We could
questions that
just
we
add
have.
it.
So we could do the kinds of review that the mayor is talking about.
Yes, sir. I'd be happy to do that. Yes, ma'am.
I may have missed this answer, but will you have then written guidelines for how it will be used?
Yes, ma'am.
I think I've gone on record, Chief, as saying that I think that we should provide our police force with the tools they need and the protection they need to make their job safe. Now, that being said, there seems to be some public outcry and some public concern about using asset forfeiture funds to purchase part of this vehicle. Are we absolutely certain that that's an okay?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Okay. The other thing I have to ask is the $63,000 from Police Auto Fund, how much does that affect our ongoing replacement of police cars? Is that going to cause a problem?
No, sir. They're not actually police vehicles. These are the vehicles that our community service aides are in.
Okay.
And so we just stretch it another year,
Okay.
and we'll be able to do it.
Thank you.
Any other questions by council? I'll open the public hearing. Would anyone from